good people don't smoke marijuana.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show. The medical marijuana for you and me. Ah, yeah, the medical marijuana. Whoa, 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 ah, yeah, the medical. It's the medical marijuana show. You knew we know.
I want to talk to you.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Medical Marijuana Radio. This one is for the 10th of March, 2018. I'm your host, Larry Love. We're here every week to bring you the latest information on the use of medical cannabis and the fight for adult use and the fight for more medical use of this wonderful plant that's helping so many people. This week, our guest will be David A. Dawson, former director of the Endocannabinoid Research and Development at Integrated Pain and Rejuvenation Centers of America. He also was studied by molecular psychology at North Central University, and his book is Medical Cannabis, A Definitive Guide, available on Amazon, and we'll be talking to him in the second part of the show. But as always, first up, I've got news for you. 1, 2, 3.
I've got news for you.
Yes, I've got news for you, and this first story is showing the effects of legal cannabis on other industries. This is from the Cannabis.co in Colorado, from the Denver Post. Marijuana industry pays trimmers so well, restaurants are struggling to hire. Colorado restaurants are having a near impossible time hiring and retaining cooks thanks to the marijuana industry. This is by Allison Reedy of the Denver Post. We've got a food crisis in Colorado, and it's nothing to do with crop yield or farm-to-table availability or ingredients. Local restaurants are having a near impossible time hiring and retaining cooks, and the effects may be showing up on the plate and in the check. The drum-tight unemployment rate and the frenetic pace of new restaurant openings are major factors. But as it turns out, people who are good on the kitchen prep line or in the dish room can make almost double the hourly wage trimming marijuana for sale. While there is no hard data on people leaving the restaurant industry for marijuana, many Denver chefs and restaurant owners believe pot is a major culprit for their cook conundrum. We go months trying to fill a position. It's always been bad, but then they legalized marijuana and it got really bad. There's no way we can pay what they're paying, said Chef Justin Brunson, owner of the restaurants The Royal Rooster and Old Major Culture Meat and Cheese. Boy, that's an interesting name, and a long name, an expensive name to put up on a sign, for sure. Entry-level bud trimmers make $12 to $15 an hour, but speedy cutters can earn up to $20, according to the CannaRecruiter.com. This compares with the average $12.83 per hour paid to line and prep cooks. Still above a minimum wage, but considering the physical demands of kitchen work, many people choose jobs that don't require them to perform near constant aerobatic feats in a windowless 90-degree room. It's very hot in those kitchens. So their choice is to sit and trim marijuana, cannabis, pot, ganja, all that stuff. Okay, next up, cannabis oil, of course, is the only thing available in some states. This story comes out of, where is that? North Carolina. Contaminated cannabis oil causing emergency room visits, North Carolina health officials warn. This is from March 6th. In Raleigh, North Carolina, state health officials issues an advisory Tuesday warning residents of a potentially contaminated cannabidiol oil that has caused a recent spike in hospital emergency room visits. Along with being consumed as an oil, a similar product has been found in electronic cigarettes and vaporizing pens. Officials with the new North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services said in a news release the state health officials are working with Carolina's Poison Control Center to investigate more than 30 reports since December of consumers of the product who were treated in emergency departments across the state for serious symptoms, including altered mental status, hallucinations, seizures, loss of consciousness, and rapid heartbeat. No deaths have been reported. Well, we know that has never happened. People should be aware that products labeled CBD oil might contain other substances, State Health Director Betsy Tilson stated in a release. The symptoms we are seeing that result in these emergency departments visits are not typical for CBD oil use. So it goes on, and this is from the newsobserver.com in North Carolina. Be careful where you get your CBD oil and products from. Make sure that you're getting enough milligrams of CBD for the price that you're paying. Ask them where it's been tested and see what else is in it. So this is an ongoing situation. Here's a really bad situation here, a conundrum, so to speak, in Florida. Green Cove Springs, Florida. John Inman, Clay County man, is arrested for marijuana possession even with his medical marijuana card. John Inman, 45, walked out of Clay County Jail exhausted but determined. In a soft-spoken voice, he explained why he was arrested on marijuana charges and why he believes it was a wrongful arrest. I was doing what my doctors told me to do, smoke marijuana, he said. The Clay County Sheriff's arrest report shows he had bags of marijuana, vials of oil, bongs, and more. Both Inman and his daughter, Shay, are medical marijuana card holders. He said that he prefers the organic form of the drug because the marijuana from the state licensed dispensaries make him sick. I wonder why. I made complaints to my doctor and they told me to smoke marijuana, and that's what I've been doing, Inman said. They know it. My doctors are well aware of it, and they are telling me to keep doing it. Now, there is a situation in Florida, by the way, where they're not, the law does not allow for smoking it, which is really, really weird. He was arrested on charges of intent to distribute or sell, a charge he denies. Cell phone pictures of his home, how investigators went in and how the condition was when they left it. Shay, the daughter, 20, was read her rights and arrested, but she was released. I'm just trying to take my medication and help my dad, she said. Ethan Dowdy is a neighbor and a friend of the family. Everything that I know off there was no operation was going on, said Dowdy. He was using it for himself and for her. Inman said that he had decided to buy his marijuana from the streets. He prefers the raw form of his prescribed medicine. I purchased it on the streets, and I had it in my house, and they arrested me for it, he said. He said his preference is driven by his concerns over the use of chemicals to process the marijuana sold in dispensaries. Quote, our government is regulating ethanol in stuff that is making us more unhealthy, Inman said. Florida is not a compassionate state. Inman said he's expressed his concern to the Florida Department of Health before. He said he will fight the charges against him. I'm going to fight this because there are many going through the same thing, and Florida has been sitting on this for too long, he said. And let's hope that this thing susses out. These laws can be reviewed with the booking sheet of Mr. Inman showing the violations of the Florida state statute. And according to the Office of Medical Marijuana, Florida law makes it illegal to buy your prescribed medicine from the streets. Only approved medical marijuana treatment centers can dispense medical marijuana or low THC cannabis legally in Florida. So that's the fight that's going on in Florida, which is terrible because it is a BS medical program that is stalled and is just terrible. We have a couple stories out of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's statewide shortage of medical marijuana causes a local dispensary to close for a few days. So they're just getting started. But here's this report, and then we'll have another one after that. And here's this report, and we'll have another one. Whoops. Hang on. We're going to do this one first.
PharmaCann got a state permit to open in a former Chi-Chi's near the mall, but mall operator Simon Properties sued in federal court to block it from opening. It claims the deed forbids illegal activity, and that would include the dispensary since marijuana is illegal under federal law. PharmaCann wants the issue resolved in common pleas court. Its attorney, Jeremy Unruh, says it's simply a case of an outdated restrictive covenant.
They're trying to mushroom this into the bigger policy issue as to whether or not the Federal Controlled Substances Act operates to preclude all 30 of the states that now have medical marijuana law on their books.
Simon's attorneys declined to comment. Judge Jean Prater has given the two sides until this week for written comments before she rules on whether she'll keep the case in federal court. Pat Loeb, KYW News Radio.
Okay, that was a report from Pennsylvania about a case that could have national impact on the medical cannabis industry. I'm going to try to play this other clip that I have here about a shortage statewide causing a dispensary to close, but it doesn't seem to be playing. I'll try it one more time. Here we go.
Medical marijuana is in short supply, so much so that Pittsburgh's only dispensary is temporarily closed because, well, there's nothing left to sell. The problem is there's only one legal growing operation. Cresco Yeltra, which is based in Jefferson County, had to supply all 6 dispensaries that are open across the state. For patients who've waited for years to get the drug, this setback is upsetting. 11 Investigates' Aaron Martin live with this now. And Aaron, you found out the shortage is temporary.
Yeah, David, the shortage will only be measured in a matter of weeks, but it's still causing a lot of problems, like here at Salivo Wellness in Squirrel Hill, where they've had to close their doors for the next few days simply because there's nothing left to sell. It's causing quite a headache, not only for business owners, but for patients as well. Usually these parking spots in front of Salivo Wellness in Squirrel Hill are filled, but not today.
We will be closed March 5th and March 6th. Due to lack of inventory.
The medical marijuana dispensary temporarily closed its doors because there's almost nothing left to sell.
It's tough, like it being out, because I want to go back and get some more medicine, but with it being sold out, they sold out in like 4 or 5 days, I think. So
James Tarman began using medical marijuana 2 weeks ago for neck and back pain from a car accident, but since then he's been unable to get any more.
Product's got to grow. So it's like, I feel like people need to be a little bit more understanding that it's a new thing. And
we went to Cresco Yeltra co-founder Trent Hartley, who owns a dispensary in Butler and runs the only legal marijuana grow operation in Pennsylvania.
We're the only processed grower right now. Puts a little pressure on us, obviously, to keep product on the shelf. We're doing the best we can.
Hartley says demand is much higher than they expected. So far, 6,000 patients have been approved for medical marijuana in Pennsylvania, but only 2,200 have received medical marijuana over the first few weeks. Hartley hopes other growers will be approved quickly to help with the shortage.
We realize that we'd be first to market. I'm not sure that we realize that the other grower processors would be this far behind us.
Now, 2 more growers are expected to be in place by the end of the month once the testing of their product is wrapped up. Hartley tells me as for their product, they have another harvest coming in the next 2 weeks, and then they plan on getting that out to the dispensaries as quickly as possible. Reporting live tonight in Squirrel Hill, Aaron Martin, Channel 11 News.
Okay, again, that was from Pennsylvania, and we hope that they work out their problems. Obviously, one grower, it's hard to take care of the whole state, and they'll work things out. This is a new industry. There's going to be bugs. All right, moving down the East Coast a little bit to Delaware, where I spent 5 years. No, not in prison, but in a boarding school. Anyway, the push for legal recreational cannabis in Delaware continues.
People People have been singing about marijuana since the 70s. Decades later, cannabis supporters are still pushing lawmakers to make recreational marijuana legal in Delaware. Trying to get House Bill 110 passed through the State House and Senate for a second straight year after seeing no movement last summer.
I believe that lawmakers are taking the time to carefully consider this measure.
The Delaware Cannabis Advocacy Group says 100,000 Delawareans are already using recreational pot. The group believes the state, not criminals, should be in control.
It's a public safety nightmare to allow the criminal market to control this lucrative cash crop.
So the group met with lawmakers, including Representative Charles Postles. The result?
I'm opposed to HB 110.
His reason?
There is proven evidence that can be permanent damage done to the brain while it's still in its developing stages.
Marijuana supporters say it isn't true.
They know cannabis isn't dangerous. They know it's not the reason why violent crime exists.
All of which will be up for debate. As for Representative Rich Collins, he is against the bill because he believes marijuana usage leads to a long string of addiction.
I've heard the most heartrending stories of people dying from opioids, but when I go and talk to so many people who freely admit they are addicted, the huge numbers of them started on marijuana.
Legalized marijuana supporters have an uphill climb to get HB 110 passed, but by no means are they giving up on the war. In Dover, I'm Timothy Parker for WRGE Delmarva Zone, NBC station.
Okay, and he's out. Delaware is the first state, but they may not have the best news people, so to speak. Anyway, I hope Delaware will come around. Everyone's going to come around to legalize this plant soon, but the fight is on. And the fight is also on in Oklahoma. I think it was last week or the week before I told you about a frequent guest of ours, Dr. Regina Nelson, who got stopped in Oklahoma carrying her meds while she was going to a symposium that she was speaking about the endocannabinoid system. But Oklahoma is still trying, so here's this report.
State Question 788 would legalize marijuana for medical purposes in Oklahoma. This comes 3 years after the state legalized CBD oil. But for many families, that was simply not enough. We traveled to Colorado to meet one of those families, the Hilterbrands. With 3 sick kids and no other medical options available, the family packed up and moved to Colorado. That is where they reside today, with hopes of one day returning home.
If State Question 788 passes, it'll be the first time that we've had hope that we could go home.
Home for Amy Berlin Hilterbrand and her family is Choctaw, Oklahoma. The very thought of returning is enough to move her to tears.
It'd really be nice to get to go home.
Hilterbrand, her husband, and her 3 sons currently live in Colorado. It's a move they made in 2013 after years of battling and desperately trying to control her teenage son Austin's severe epileptic seizures.
Unfortunately, when Austin was 4 years old, he started, instead of having 1 or 2 occasionally, he started having hundreds of seizures every day.
Austin was eventually diagnosed with a catastrophic form of epilepsy known as Dravet syndrome. For 10 years, Hilterbrand says he was prescribed dozens of varying pharmaceuticals, none of which stopped the seizures, and several of which came close to killing him.
We really didn't know what to do. We had recently seen a special from Dr. Sanjay Gupta on medical marijuana, and I told my husband, I'm taking Austin to Colorado to try weed. That's exactly what I said.
And so began the family's journey to save Austin's life. He is now prescribed nasal sprays, tinctures, suppositories, and whole plant combinations. Within seconds of being administered, Austin's seizures now stop.
We didn't find any pharmaceuticals that would stop Austin's seizures. But the cannabis does. It's also our little boy's medicine. Both of our little boys have also had seizures now. So instead of us having to start on pharmaceuticals or pills, they can use they can use a plant
It's a plant thousands are now utilizing to treat a long list of crippling illnesses. Hilterbrand knows this firsthand through her involvement with American Medical Refugees, a support group she and her husband Jason founded in the months following their move to Colorado.
We now have helped over 300 families from 39 different states and 3 different countries.
And they'll continue to help hundreds more, while, in the meantime, encouraging Oklahomans to pass State Question 788.
You have to vote yes. You have to vote yes.
And help them come home.
Now, we would not have Austin without cannabis in Colorado. And I just wish I could say that it was because of Oklahoma. I wish I could say that Oklahoma saved his life.
Oklahoma voters will finally have the opportunity to decide whether to approve or reject the legalization of medical cannabis on June 26th. Emily Collins, Fox 25 News.
If approved by voters, State Question 788 would permit doctors to recommend a patient who's at least 18 years old for a state-issued medical marijuana license, and a license holder would be allowed to legally possess up to 3 ounces.
Let's hope that Oklahoma can continue on the path to pass that. And, of course, Amy Dawn Hilterbrand is a great advocate and activist. We had her on the show a year or so ago, and she's the one that started that campaign about 6630507, Talk to the Hand, and people were writing the number on their arms, and Willie Nelson and all kinds of celebrities. So, yeah, we'll get Amy back, and we'll find out how she's doing and how her family is doing. The opioid problem has caused, actually, they're cutting back on manufacturing opioids, so there's going to be an opioid the restrictions that are out there now. And here is, I believe, from California. The opioid restrictions make a local veterinarian promote CBD use for dogs because they use opiates as well on animals. So here's this report.
Well, the Drug Enforcement Administration says it will continue to decrease the number of opioids manufactured here in the U.S. That is having a ripple effect right here in Reno. News 4's Ryan Curry discovered how it could potentially affect your pet's medical treatments.
The benefit to CBDs is they're extremely safe. They do not contain any of the active, like the THC products.
Dr. Bob Baker has been a Reno veterinarian since 1993. He often prescribes medical marijuana for dogs experiencing anxiety or pain.
We've been using the CBDs in clinical practice.
Just going to stop that for a second. This guy and a lot of people use the plural of CBD, and they call it CBDs. CBDs do this, CBDs do that. CBD, one, there's only a CBD, cannabidiol. So here are people trying to come off as experts, and they're showing their lack of knowledge. Anyway, CBD is good for dogs.
Because for a couple of years now, a lot of the indications for it are relatively subjective since there's not a lot of research on these products.
The Drug Enforcement Administration has reduced the amount of opioid medications manufactured in the United States. Dr. Baker says this limits his access to opioids. He hasn't been able to get any opioid medicine for a few weeks because it's been on back order. He believes that cannabis is a much better solution than opioid medicine.
The opiates are probably a pretty poor choice for chronic pain anyway. They're good for acute pain, but for chronic long-term pain, CBDs, gabapentin, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories are much better choices than opiates.
Cannabis products don't contain the THC that is often used for recreational purposes.
This product will not make them high. They won't get addicted to it. It's not something that's going to, have any adverse effects on the pet other than maybe some mild sedation.
Dr. Baker hopes more research can be done on cannabis for dogs. Marijuana is federally illegal, and only states who have allowed for medical marijuana and recreational marijuana can use it.
There's over 100 active metabolites in a marijuana plant, and the CBDs are just a small portion of them.
In Reno, Ryan Curry reporting.
CBDs and THC for recreational use. You know, THC is obviously all a part of what's really great about using it medically, and some of these stories are just written by novices, and it's really, really sad. We'll be back in just a moment with David A. Dawson, author of Medical Cannabis, A Definitive Guide, right after this.
It's all about the 420 MMJ Radio. The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana radio. Radio show.
Hey, this is Scott from Rare Dangness. You're listening to Medical Marijuana Radio.
And we're back. And online today, I have David A. Dawson. David is the author of a book called The Medical Cannabis, The Definitive Guide by David A. Dawson, available on Amazon.com, probably among other places. And David also is a molecular biologist and has a company called Balanced Bio, and that's for CBD oil and other CBD products. Welcome to Medical Marijuana Radio, David.
Well, thank you very much.
So, how long have you been in the cannabis industry and studying the endocannabinoid system?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. I got into the industry in kind of well, everybody gets into the industry in basically the same way. Just so many of them have experienced success with illnesses, and mine was the way I got into the industry was essentially I have a form of muscular dystrophy, and the way that's traditionally treated, and the protocol for treating muscular dystrophy, the pain from muscular dystrophy which is what they refer to as chronic pain. The protocol was established in the late 1930s and early 1940s, and essentially what it is inflicting the patient with an increasingly strong series of powerful opiates. For me, what happened with me was they pretty much decided, okay, we're going to just start burying this guy in opiates, and so they essentially started throughout my entire adult life was just essentially, oh, okay, well, here's your first opiate. It's called codeine.
Right.
And we're going to start with that, and then eventually, of course, I would develop a tolerance to codeine. So they said, oh, well, we have plenty of opiates to choose from. What we'll do is we'll change the opiate and we'll increase the dose.
Right. Well, this is the problem that we're having all over the United States, whether you are in a car accident or whether it's muscular dystrophy or anything. They start with the opiates, and then you get a tolerance, and they give you more. And so this is what's going on in our country and all over the world, really. So had you been involved with cannabis before this? Had you had experience with it?
Well, in college, of course. I unlike Bill Clinton, I inhaled deeply and frequently, and that's when I determined that cannabis worked.
That was the point, was to inhale. Yeah. So it worked for you, and it took away some of your muscular dystrophy symptoms. What is it? The muscle spasms? What is that?
Well, it's basic neuropathic pain is the way it's kind of phrased, and essentially what happened was, after college I got a degree and started teaching at the college level, but during a summer hiatus I took a job in the casino industry and basically tripled what I was making teaching at the college level, so I never went back to college, but the problem is in the casino industry, they drug test you all the time, and if I pop for opiates, oh, that's fine, as long as because you have a doctor's prescription for opiates. So
right. Well, that's the hypocrisy that's going on. We have medical cannabis programs, in 29 or 30 states, yet there is still discrimination against people using medical cannabis. We get charged taxes on our medicine, whereas pharmaceutical medicine you don't. So I mean, we still have a lot to work out. So when did you get into studying cannabis and the cannabinoids and terpenes and so forth, and how did that change how you used cannabis?
Well, essentially what happened was, they had me addicted, administratively addicted to opiates throughout my entire adult life. So what happened was by 2004, what took place was they had increased the dose so high, and so high, I mean, I was taking 500 milligrams of morphine 3 times a day.
Wow, that's heavy. Yeah.
Yeah, and it caused me to have a stroke. I lost the use of my left arm. That was also the last day that I walked. And they put me onto hospice. And basically, doctors stood around my bedside and said, well, we've done everything we can. We followed our protocol. We've addicted him to opiates for his entire adult life. So just let him die. Now, at the time, I wasn't really that interested in dying, so I started doing some research, and so by 2010, I got off of basically every. I haven't done a pharmaceutical medication since 2010.
So how did you get off of opiates? What did you do? Did you use cannabis to wean off of opiates?
I used cannabis to get off of the opiates.
All right, so let's get into that. I've had other patients on before who have an opiate addiction problem or abuse problem, however you want to call it. So how hard is it to get off of the opiates, and how do you do it? You can't just cold turkey it, I don't believe. You have to wean off. And how do you introduce the cannabinoids into your system? In what form?
Yeah, that's basically what you need to do is the opiates and the cannabinoids, or the CB. I'm sorry, the tetrahydrocannabinol, phytocannabinoid, act on the receptors in pretty much the same way. So what you can do is basically, as you're weaning yourself off of the opiates, you can use the cannabis to kind of work those receptors in the same way.
Right. So, but I'd like to know specifically. I know how hard it is, and it works differently with everybody. But so how do you cut back from? I don't know how many opioids you were taking. You said 500 milligrams or something, but 3 times a day. So how do you cut down? What do you do first so that you don't get a seizure or a stroke? How did you do it, and how did you introduce the cannabis, and in what form? Were you taking oil? Were you just smoking, or what?
Basically, at the beginning I started smoking because that was what was traditional, what I knew. Now I currently pretty much only vaporize when I use it medically.
Okay, so you haven't used any like oil capsules or RSO, any kind of oil extraction?
I have. Yeah, I have, but basically those are pretty strong for me. They rather than balancing my endocannabinoid system, they tend to downregulate my endocannabinoid system.
So you might be having a reaction different than some other people, which happens a lot with people in cannabis. No?
Well, no, I don't think so, because really it depends on the type of pain that you're experiencing. Like cancer patients and people that are in real major agony, they need higher doses than I do. Because I experience basic neuropathic pain like arthritis and that sort of thing. Those are all about realistically low dose or moderate dose techniques are better than high dose techniques. It's not like the opiates where you're in a lot of pain. Okay, well, or you're in basic neuropathic pain. okay, what we'll do is we'll just increasing the dose. With cannabis, it's kind of a little bit different. Like, I don't use as much cannabis as I did back at the beginning. I mean, I've tapered off. I used to be doing medicating, vaporizing like 3 times a day, and now I'm down, and I'm down quite a bit from that. It's rare that I actually even medicate even once a day. I mean,
okay, I sort of want to, just go back, a step, because I think it's really important. There's going to be people listening to this show and listening to you who have an opioid abuse problem where it's not working for them anymore, but you got to be very, very careful. So were you under a doctor's care? Did you tell your physician that you were going to try to get off of the opioids? And
physicians were totally against it.
So I think
no
it's
value whatsoever was the way it was explained to me.
right. Well, so I think it's important for you to give us your experience on how you cut down the opioids and replaced it with the cannabis. Did you break everything in a quarter first and take a quarter of what you were taking? And how long did it take? And when did you progress to the point?
Essentially, what I did was I started smoking it, doing one hits and that sort of thing, because that was at the time that was the cheapest way of doing it, and so that was how I did it. Was if I was experiencing pain, I would medicate.
Okay, so it might be more than 3 times a day, like you were taking the opioids. Okay, so
right.
So how many weeks or months did it take for you, and how to get off?
3 weeks. I was pretty much off the opiates entirely.
And were there any downsides? Were there any withdrawals, or did the cannabis sort of take care of that?
Much took care of all the, it was mainly pain issues that I was dealing with.
So it took you, you said only 3 weeks to get off of 1,500 milligrams of opiates a day.
3 weeks to get off the opiates.
So
I've touched a pharmaceutical medication since.
Okay, well that's absolutely wonderful, and I hope that people listening to this will actually be very careful trying to get off of this and watch what's going on. Do you have any tips for people what to watch out for if maybe they're withdrawing from opiates too quickly? Do you have any tips on what to look for? And again, I'm trying to find out from you how you weaned off, like how much, like the first week did you take a quarter as much of opiates and add the smoking of cannabis? So I sort of think
really that's an individualized process, and I didn't really have a guide to it. All I did was just basically, if I was in pain, I would medicate, and by medicate, of course, I mean I would use the cannabis.
Right. Right. Okay, so David, let's get back to your book, Medical Cannabis: The Definitive Guide. You're in paperback now by David A. Dawson. It's available on Amazon. I'm looking at some of your chapters and so forth, and you're listing information about arthritis and asthma and cancer and diabetes. Fibromyalgia, which a lot of women have, and men as well. So tell me a little bit about diabetes, let's say. How are people using cannabis for diabetes, and are they getting off of diabetes drugs or using this in conjunction with?
Actually, diabetes is really, really interesting. It's one of the studies that I did. I'm tied in with a laboratory that started extracting endocannabinoids for me and measuring balance in the endocannabinoid system, and that's what. And one of the things that's really interesting about diabetes is what we found is that diabetics don't produce enough of the endocannabinoid called verotamine. And the thing is, verotamine is really interesting because it's what's referred to as an antagonist at the CB1 receptor. And what that means is rather than like like THC, which is an agonist at the CB1, rather than giving you the munchies like THC does. Verotamine.
Go ahead, Verotamine.
Verotamine actually inhibits appetite, and verotamine is basically the same. Well, you know how anandamide and THC are essentially the same molecule.
Yes.
I may be getting into it right now, but yeah, anandamide is the endocannabinoid, and THC is the phytocannabinoid, and essentially what this was all determined by Dr. Raphael Mechoulam in Israel is that they're the same molecule. It's just one is produced by the human body and one is produced by the cannabis plant. THC by the plant, of course, and anandamide is the endocannabinoid equivalent, which is the produced by the human body or the vertebrate body.
And that's why cannabis and cannabinoids and terpenes act so well with our bodies, that we have.
Because it's the same molecule. You know, we've got these receptors that are going, oh, you know, if I could only get this one molecule, it would make me happy.
So so let me ask you this, David. As far as diabetes is concerned, is it more what cannabinoids are really terpenes are for diabetes as opposed to?
Okay, here's the story. Verotamine is endocannabinoid, and diabetics don't produce enough of it. Well, the phytocannabinoid equivalent to verotamine is THCV, THC-varin, tetrahydrocannabinol varin.
Right, which is very rare, sort of. It's only in certain strains.
It's only in certain strains, like
from Africa.
It's easiest to get here in the United States. That's really heavy in that THCV molecule. Is Durban poison.
Right.
There's another strain out there that I actually have access to now because of a guy in Colorado.
That Doug's Varin?
It's Doug's Varin,
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I've heard a lot about that.
Yeah, that's one that is going to be really, really important in the next few years.
So do you feel that this is going to be a replacement? Cannabis and Doug's Varin and THCV will be a possible replacement for diabetes medication in the future?
Insulin? I don't know. I right now I've got a bunch of patients that I recommended strains to, and basically what they've done is they cut down on their insulin.
Okay, I think that's great information about diabetes. I just want to touch on a couple of more symptoms, afflictions that people are going through.
Okay.
Let me.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Say again.
Let's talk a little bit about fibromyalgia, because fibromyalgia
Fabulous. That's perfect.
is the thing in the world to treat. And here's what happens with fibromyalgia patients. Basically, what goes on is they go to the doctor at the beginning and they say, "Hey, doc, I'm in pain," and the doctor says, "Oh, well, no problem. We've got medication for that. Here's your molecule. Here's your opiate. It's called codeine. It's called hydrocodone. Here, it's for that. We've got the molecule for that. No problem." And so what happens is then, down the road, the patient goes back and they say, "Oh, doctor, I'm constipated." The doctor says, "Oh, you have opiate-induced constipation. Oh, we've got a molecule for that. No problem. Here's your molecule." And so they produce this for the opiate-induced constipation, and then the patient comes back and they say, "Oh, doctor, I'm depressed." "Oh, well, no problem. Here's your molecule. It's another drug, okay?" And then they come back and they say, "Doctor, I'm too wired up." And the doctor says, "Oh, okay, no problem. Here's your molecule." And so what happens is I mean, I get people coming to me, they're on like 25, 30 different medications every day.
Terrible.
Um,
That's
because
horrifying.
it's just this constant thing, and of course it's all designed by the pharmaceutical companies that have produced these. We can treat this symptom here. Here's your molecule.
So how is cannabis helping fibromyalgia? How is it? Because it's really nerve pain and so much other. Fibromyalgia affects so many people.
And the thing is, with cannabis, what you're doing is you've got rather than this single molecule approach that the pharmaceutical companies use, we've got all of these molecules that work together, all of these phytocannabinoids and all these terpenes that work together to make you feel better. And it's called the entourage effect, and it's a matter of all the molecules working together to balance an endocannabinoid system. And,
So what type of cannabis are people using for fibromyalgia? Is it also smoking, or is it Rick Simpson type of whole plant oil? What are we talking about?
I don't really recommend FICO or what you just referred to, Rick Simpson oil, which I refer to as FICO, which is full extract cannabis oil.
Right.
Very often, I only really recommend that for like cancer patients usually, unless it's somebody that's in real major agony.
Uh-huh. All right, let's before we go, because I do want to talk about your CBD company, but just give me some info on insomnia and sleep disorders, because I've read some studies and so forth that possibly sleep apnea cannabis can be good for. So what are you finding with that?
Well, of course, there's when you get to sleep, you're looking at indicas rather than sativas. And there's various things that you can do for sleep. Your terpene for sleep is myrcene, and what you find is that indicas are heavy in the myrcene terpenoid. Now, the other thing that's kind of interesting about sleep disorders is that, and this is why cannabis works, is because when you get to like CBN, it's another type of cannabinoid. But the problem that you run into is CBN, you don't really find strains that are high in CBN, because CBN is CBN is produced when THC breaks down or oxidizes.
Right. So, for instance, I have some strains that are 3 years old, and the older they get, even though they're kept in nice, tight, sealed bottles and so forth,
Right.
age, light, and so forth, and heat will change the molecules, and obviously older strains will have CBN in it. But the problem is, dispensaries are so quick to get a product out that it doesn't give time to change.
They don't have time to produce the CBN.
Right. So in the future, though, there'll be people that will be aging cannabis in order to develop the CBN, and there'll be patches, and there'll be capsules, and there'll be everything to help people. So before we go, let's talk about balancedbio.com, where you are involved with a company that is selling some, what you say is high-grade CBD oil and tinctures and so forth. So tell me, I know that there's a problem out there with some companies that charge a lot of money for CBD products, and there's very little CBD in it. So tell me about how you're sourcing and how you're testing your product before it goes to the patients.
Well, of course, we do laboratory analysis of ours, and essentially what ours is a full spectrum cannabis oil rather than or full spectrum CBD oil. So it's got all the molecules that are necessary to get that entourage effect. And that was key for me when I selected a CBD company to go through, because I really didn't. At the beginning, I really didn't want to get into CBD, but essentially, essentially what happened with me is is the vice president of the laboratory that I referred to just a little bit ago. She came to me and said, "Hey, I want to do this. I want to do it right. What do I do?" I'm like, "Okay, well, you have to get full spectrum CBD. Don't be looking at isolates, because CBD alone, or in the long term, it will cause depression." And that was already demonstrated pretty effectively by GW Pharmaceuticals, with a drug called Rimonabant back in the late 1980s, where they thought it was going to be this miracle cure for diabetes, and so they released it into Europe. People in Europe, basically the people that were on that medication, got extremely depressed to the point of suicidal thoughts.
Now, was this CBD without a balanced THC with it? Was this CBD?
Right. Yeah, that was it. It was CBD alone, and that's why you don't want to do, and that's why you don't want to do THC alone, because too much of anything is not going to be not necessarily a good thing, whether it's THC or whether it's CBD or anything in too high amounts is just not going to be good for you, and that's why you look for balance.
Right.
And that's what this industry is all about. This medicine is all about.
Right. So people, listeners, if you go to balancedbio.com, you can go to their shopping page and you can take a look at their different tinctures and so forth. I see you have some stuff for pets, 240 milligrams for pets, 240 milligrams for humans. And is there any difference between the two? They seem exactly the same to me.
Well, they're basically the same, but you have to understand pets, like dogs. Let's just talking about dogs. Dogs don't have that many CB1 receptors. So essentially, what you want to do is make sure that your dose of THC is really, really low, because you can just over medicate an animal.
Right. Well, obviously, this is all derived from the hemp plant, which means that it's below 3%, to 3% or below THC, and of course together they work quite well. Is there alcohol in these? There's no additives at all, right?
No, this is all CO2 extracted.
That's fabulous. And so people check out balancedbio.com and check out, they actually have some very strong medicine there. I'm seeing like 4,850 milligrams of CBD, and that's a lot of milligrams, and so it's roughly it's roughly about $100 a milligram, basically, is what I'm seeing.
Well, that's the size of the bottle.
Like per thousand, per 1,000 milligrams, it's about $100, or a little less or so. But yes, obviously, depending. I mean, you have bottles that are 1,450 milligrams, and
right, and the bottles that are smaller are the same dose as the bottles that are larger. It's just the bottles that are larger are going to be more economical.
Right. Also, your book, David.
Yeah, my book is on that website too, and you can get a book cheaper on that website than you can if you go through a major corporation that starts with A
and ends with a Zan. Okay, so check out David A. I'm sorry, David A. Dawson's book, and you go to his website, which is the balancedbio.com. You can order it on there as well, right? I see it's for $28.99 there.
Right.
And
but if you go onto the Azon site, it's like $40 on that site.
Right. So save $10 by going to balancedbio.com. David, thank you very much.
That are on Balanced Bio.
Yeah, and check out the CBD there as well. David, thank you very much for. I'd like to have you back again and talk about terpenes next time. And I thank you for talking to us today, and I appreciate the fact that you have a book out there. My pleasure. Okay, David, we'll be right back after this. Thanks so much.
in a blanket that's tattered and worn. Mother doing the best she can, teaching hope in a hopeless world. Eldest son, he stayed in school, listened to his mother, didn't drink or use. Yeah, every job he wants, he gets refused. It takes hope in a hopeless world, looking for hope in a hopeless world, searching for love in such hateful times, trying to stay strong when my mind gets weak, looking for hope in a hopeless world. On the corner stands a young girl. The home she left was from a better part of town. Her daddy did things she couldn't talk about. Is there hope in a hopeless world?
You got a quarter for the homeless man. Spare some change for the soldiers who fought the war. Put some money in their hats and in their chins. Give them hope in a hopeless world. Hope in a hopeless world.
Trying to find love
in such hateful times.
Looking for hope in a hopeless world. Trying to ease my mind.
You got to listen to the voice inside that speaks of love. Don't compromise. Realize time is passing by. There are mountains to climb. We can't be standing still.
Oh no. Churches are full, but the prayers are not heard. Saturday's child don't want to go to Sunday school. Whatever happened to the golden rule? Teach them hope in a hopeless world. Somebody out there's got to listen. Yeah. Somebody out there's got to know what I'm talking about. Raise your hand if you're with me. There's hope in a hopeless world. Looking for hope, yeah. Searching for love in such hateful times. Trying to find love. Gotta find love in a hopeless world. I got to find love. Gotta find love in such hateful times. Gotta find love to free my mind. Free my mind. Gotta find love. Looking for hope in a hopeless world. I'm searching for love in such hateful times. Gotta find hope in a hopeless world. Got to find to free my mind. I got to find it. Gotta find hope in a hopeless world. Gotta find love. Looking for love. The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio. Show. The medical
I want to thank David A. Dawson, author of Medical Cannabis, A Definitive Guide. Check it out, and check out his CBD products as well. Also want to thank my two radio mentors, both with the initials HS. Thank you for your inspiration. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show, if you have a story to tell, a product to sell, a website, you're an advocate, you're a patient, it's info@mmjradio.com. Again, info@mmjradio.com. If you would like to hear some of our old shows, this is our 9th season. We've done over 400 shows. You can go to medicalmarijuanaradio.com. Also my YouTube channel, LSLove88. On SoundCloud and Spreaker, we're MMJ Radio. Also on CannabisTube.net, we have a channel there. On Spreaker and iHeartRadio, we're also on the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. And we're also on OnNowTV.com, channel 937. And soon, theCannaChannel.com will be happening very, very soon.
The magical marijuana. Shalabah. Shalom.
Oh yeah, and fuck Trump.
Mm-hmm.